All right, guys. Brian here with VetteSource tonight. Checking back in. Another evening here. We're tinkering in the garage and thought I would take an opportunity to talk about something that comes up often, especially for our C5 Corvettes. Now, you've seen me do, if you watched me before, if you haven't checked it out, done quite a few dismantling videos regarding C5 Corvettes. And C5 Corvettes are kind of the first iteration of Corvettes where we got into, or General Motors got into, some of the more complex electronics in them. Now, the first generation of complex electronics was when they introduced the C4, which was really amazing because the C4, for the first time, other than the 81 and 82, very rudimentary computer controls, the C4s had, basically essentially a 16-bit processing Commodore 64 type processor with a few other electronic modules built in, and that progressively moved more into complexity as the 90s came around, to where by the time the Corvette's C4 production run ended in 96, we had quite a few electronics and modules running the car. In fact, off the top of my head, I can think of 1, 2, 3, 4, probably at least 5 or 6, maybe more modules that were running the Corvettes, particularly like the 96 LT4 that I've featured here on the channel, here in the background here. But, the 97s really took it a whole big step further. And what they started doing was they went on steroids as far as electronics were concerned. So not only did they up the number of modules controlling different functions of the car, we went to at least 10 off the top of my head I can think of. They also changed the wiring systems. Now, if you've dealt with old school cars like me, you've been wrenching for years, you know that older electrical systems on cars pre-97 pretty much had heavier duty, thicker wiring installed throughout the car. And, anywhere typically from 16, 18, or actually 16, 14, I'm thinking backwards here, gauge wire that was thicker and more robust, even like here on the 67 here that we're sitting on the hood of. And I've showed you guys a video of me doing some wiring repair on this car as well. But they, 97, they decided to go to this really, really rinky-dinky 18, 22 gauge wiring. And I'm not sure if it was a matter of weight savings or if a way for them to have these modules cross-communicate, because the 97 Corvette was the first year that what we got was these modules started talking to each other. So they weren't static inputs that were going, say, to the instrument cluster or receiving inputs from the shocks and adjusting based on that. There was all kinds of things that were happening between the seat modules, the door modules, the body control module, the throttle position sensor to the throttle control module, the TCM, just lots of stuff that was not there before, which made it a heck of a lot more complex, and even the electronic brake control module. So even with the advent of this, which really made the cars much more, have a lot more creature comforts, things of that nature, but what they did was they added a layer of complexity that now we're looking 23, 24, 25 years old, has become problematic. And now what you've got is that, I jokingly refer to, because I've been in this business for as long as I have, on the parts side, it's not a matter of when the modules or electronics in your C5, whether or not they're going to fail. It's just a matter of if yours have failed yet. Now, this runs the spectrum between cars that are lower mileage, like the 96 LT4 here that has 23,000. I've seen C5s with very little miles on them, and the modules are burned out, the wiring harnesses are burned out, and the biggest problem, headaches that they have really, is you've got the electronic brake control module, which always fails, and then you've got this, the heater AC control module, which fails. So especially what we're going to do is focus on this tonight. So these units here, now the electronic brake control module, you can kind of drive around without your ABS working, without your traction control. Just be careful, you can get away with it. This is kind of a little more problematic, especially if you live down here in the south where we're at, because during the summertime, driving around in the summer with it feeling like the surface of the sun boiling you inside the passenger compartment, even if you get a black interior car, it's no fun. So tonight, real quick, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this apart. I'm going to show you guys where these fail, if you've got a failure, if you're looking for how this thing operates or what fails in it. So first things first, I'm just going to go ahead and pull this apart. I've kind of pre-pulled this apart just so we don't make the video any longer than we need to. This thing is held together with very small 7/32 screws on the back, and it's not real complex to get it apart. In fact, even if you're just a basic hobbyist, you can get this done. I'm trying to make sure I stay in frame here for you guys as I don't scratch the hood of my car. Not like it's that big a deal because it has scratches in it already. So I'm going to put these off to the side, and then what we'll do is we'll show you circuit board. So all this does is it comes apart, 2 pieces. And like I said, I've kind of taken this apart already once before. So this would be back here. This is your main logic circuit board inside here. And this is actually where your inputs from your other sensors come in. And this is where it actually has your outputs going to control your fan speed, your AC clutch, heater, blend doors, all that stuff gets controlled through these. So you can see here coming apart, this is not really terribly complicated. There's your pin outs right there, capacitors, your logic module, your logic chips right here. It's pretty standard fare, and in fact, this is actually a fairly robust circuit board. You know what, if I didn't know any better, this almost seems like it's coated with metal versus silicone. It might have a metal background in it, but it's a fairly robust piece. You can actually see there is a GM part number on this, 16254177. And I doubt that you'll be able to find this one individual, but that's just the way GM, most of the manufacturers are. They will part number everything. But this is not usually the piece that goes bad, the logic board, although sometimes it does. What usually happens with these, in addition to, the first thing I did actually forget to mention was the 97s were also the first year they went to this rubberized corporate GM coating on a lot of stuff, and frankly, it just sucks. It's not made for wear and tear. You can see it's really bad. It flakes off. It doesn't really hold up, especially if you've got fingers that have even just a little bit of oil or anything on them over time. It messes them up. It fades them out. Excuse me. The C4 electronics boards, or the electronic faces, are much easier to keep clean, and they're pretty robust. So coming through here, all we're going to do is you're going to pull, once you get in here, there's a couple of screws on inside of here and that I've taken out, and you just pull gently that circuit board back, right? And what we've got is, you can see there's our main board, and of course in here, this is going to be our plastic or rubberized inlay that gives you that tactile feeling when you're pushing your buttons in. Let's see if I can get to this. See, that just comes out there, and that comes in through there, and you can see this car actually was not very well taken care of. I remember this one when I parted it out. It was a 2001, but you can see this is pretty dirty. And then, of course, once you're in here, these buttons just pop right out. Okay, and what you'll see on the flip side is where this goes in this overlay. This is where these buttons sit down on top of here in a certain manner, and once you depress them, this is what's pushing back against there to give that input to the circuit board. So now here, of course, this is our main circuit board, and this is the piece that always goes bad. So you can look and see these little tiny, if I get my angle right, these little tiny light bulbs, right? And on the older units, and again, you've got a circuit board that feels pretty strong on this, but for whatever reason, General Motors went to a circuit board that had lights that were soldered in place. They're not removable. On the older ones, 96 and below, you could remove these bulbs and change them. The only way to get these off of here is to go ahead and desolder them and then resolder in new light bulbs. Now I'm going to tell you straight up, what's funny about this unit here is, Well, I can tell you right now, the light bulbs look really good on this, but if you'll look and see that burn spot there in that corner, this display probably does not work anymore. Just taking a look at it here. And the truth is, I rarely like to sell these as good known units just because they never ever last. Even when I sell them and I know they've been good for a while, within 6 months they fail. So, you know, you've got two high failure points on these. You've got light bulbs that burn out, and then of course you can't just pull them out of there because you'll destroy the circuit board. So they've actually got to be depinned, if you will. You can see how fragile that thing is, right? It just moves at the slightest provocation. Of course, there's your input buttons. Right there you can see, hear that as that goes in. But it's kind of a weird, I mean, it's a neat looking setup, but they're just too fragile. Now, the other thing that's odd about these is you come over to this other side, here's your control knobs for driver and passenger. And both of these actually have a miniaturized circuit board on them, if I can show this. And everything falls out, which is okay because I'm not keeping this one together. But if you look at that, even the control knob for the adjusting between zone settings for driver and passenger has a circuit board on it, which is kind of amusing. And then, of course, that input goes back into the main board, and then it leapfrogs from this board to this board, and then that's what tells your blend actuators to go ahead and change the amount of fresh, or not fresh, but hot or cold air coming in. So, you know, overall, it's interesting is they look like, to me, they did a really good effort trying to make these pretty stout, right? They did a good job as far as that, but as far as the bulbs, and what would happen too is the bulbs will actually get too hot sometimes and burn things out on the flip side, so it really makes it look pretty miserable overall. But if you're going to mess with these, if you got one that you're playing with on your car and it's failed and you're trying to figure it out, you know, what's funny is it may actually even still work on your car. You just don't know it because either this display is not working, the liquid crystal display is not working, or the bulbs aren't working, so you can't see what you're doing in here. So I figured I'd do this tonight. This isn't going to be a long video because, like I said, this is really easy to take apart. Just kind of talking about some of the oddities on these cars. And I figured I could bring this to you because I have so many loose parts hanging around here that we go over some of them. Like, for instance, this one here with these good circuit boards and everything else. I'll probably keep these around for parts to fix another one because this faceplate here is so miserable. I would never, the lithograph on this is just way too bad a shape. And I wouldn't use this one again. It's all scratched up and scuffed. I can clean this piece up. Some of these I can actually save and clean these up gently. And what I'll do is use them in aid to rebuild another one that may have a bad unit. Because like I said, the light bulbs look good on that one, so we'll go from there. But anyway, that's going to wrap it up tonight, guys. Sorry, a little bit shorter video, but of course I, like everybody else, was distracted by a week with lots of other things going on. And figured we'd just get this in for the weekend before it ended. Good. I'm going to go one video at least without dropping my camera. I know I'm going to get there one day, guys. Maybe after like 500 videos. So that'll be it for tonight, guys. And I'll check back and see you all next week. We'll talk to you then. Thanks again.